Dinner so cute. Now I'm going on a date with my GF. He winked at me across the candlelit table like I was the punchline. I didn't scream. I simply stood up and locked the door to my life. Within 72 hours, I discovered he wasn't just betraying our vows, but gutting our finances. The worst part was that the girlfriend he bragged about wasn't who I thought she was. She was something far more expensive. My name is Megan Hartley, and at 38 years old, I viewed my life through the lens of a risk assessment audit. As an operations manager at Cedar Gate Governance Lab here in Charleston, South Carolina, I was paid to identify structural weaknesses before they caused a collapse. I lived by checklists, redundancy protocols, and absolute order. My home was supposed to be the one place where the variables were controlled. I was wrong. The evening began with a deceptive warmth. I had curated the dinner party to perfection to celebrate the engagement of my best friend, Tessa Monroe, to her fiancé, Caleb Price. The dining room smelled of roasted garlic and fresh rosemary. Beeswax candles flickered against the crystal wine glasses, casting a soft, golden glow over the table. It was the kind of domestic tranquility that people post on Instagram to prove they are happy. But I have learned that the brighter the image, the darker the shadow it casts. My husband, Derek Vaughn, was ruining the composition. He had been drinking steadily since 5 o'clock, and by the time the main course arrived, his charm had curdled into something oily and aggressive. He was not looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Tessa. It was not a friendly gaze. It was a lingering, predatory stare that made Caleb shift uncomfortably in his chair. Derek leaned back, swirling his red wine, a smirk playing on his lips that suggested he knew a secret the rest of us were too stupid to understand. "So, Caleb," Derek said, his voice too loud for the small room. Locking it down. Brave man." "We're very happy," Caleb said, his hand instinctively covering Tessa's hand on the table. Derek laughed, a short, sharp sound. Then he looked directly at Tessa, his eyes dropping to her neckline before snapping back to me with a look of pure disdain. "Well, enjoy it while it lasts." Derek slurred slightly. He gestured around the room, encompassing the dinner I had spent 6 hours preparing. "Dinner so cute. Now I'm going on a date with my GF." The sentence hung in the air like toxic smoke. Tessa went pale. Caleb stiffened. I felt a physical blow to my chest, but my face remained immobile. GF. Girlfriend. He had said it right there, in front of our closest friends, with the casual arrogance of a man who believes he is untouchable. Derek saw the silence stretching out and rolled his eyes. It was a joke. God, Megan, lighten up. You're so stiff. He winked at me. He actually winked. He wanted me to smile. He wanted me to validate his humiliation of me, to smooth over the social awkwardness he had created. I did not smile. I did not scream. I slowly lowered my silver fork to the china plate. The metal hit the porcelain with a soft, deliberate clink. In the silence of the room, it sounded like the safety being clicked off a firearm. I stood up, my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. I did not look at Tessa or Caleb. I turned and walked out of the dining room, down the hallway, and into the master bedroom. I opened the closet. I pulled out Derek's large leather weekender bag. I did not fold his shirts. I did not pair his socks. I grabbed armfuls of his expensive suits, his casual wear, his toiletries, and I shoved them into the bag. I treated his belongings exactly as he had treated our marriage like garbage. I felt a cold clarity washing over me. This was not a tantrum. This was a logistical removal of a liability. I zipped the bag shut. It bulged awkwardly. I dragged it back down the hall. When I entered the living room, Derek was standing up, his face flushed with anger. He started to move toward me, his hands raising. "What the hell are you doing?" Derek demanded, stepping forward. Caleb was out of his seat in a second. He stepped between us, placing a firm hand on Derek's chest. "Don't touch her," Caleb said, his voice low and dangerous. Derek looked at Caleb, then at Tessa, and realized he had lost his audience. The charming facade dropped completely, his face twisted into a sneer, revealing the cruelty I had spent years making excuses for. "You're crazy!" Derek spat at me, pointing a finger over Caleb's shoulder. "You're making a scene over a joke. You really want to do this?" I pushed the heavy bag across the floor until it hit his shins. I looked him in the eye, my pulse steady, my voice flat. "You just asked for a chance. Here is the chance. Go now." The room was silent. Derek looked at the bag, then at me. He realized I was not negotiating. He snatched the handle of the bag, his knuckles white. He leaned in, bypassing Caleb, and looked at me with eyes full of venom. "You will regret doing this in front of people," he whispered. He turned and stormed out. The front door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the house. I walked over and engaged the deadbolt with a solid thud. Then the chain. Then the bottom lock. I did not feel heartbroken. I felt the terrifying, hollow sensation of a house that had suddenly gone quiet. Yet, as I checked the handle one last time, my hands were not shaking. A strange, cold focus had taken over my nervous system, replacing the grief that should have been there. I moved through the house like a sentry patrolling a perimeter, checking every window latch and sliding door. My home was no longer a sanctuary. It was a fortress, and the enemy had a key. That was when the realization hit me. The key. I walked into the home office and pulled at the handle of the gray metal filing cabinet where we kept everything: birth certificates, the deed, the insurance policies. It was locked. I reached for the spare key in the desk drawer, but my fingers brushed against empty plastic. The key was gone. I remembered seeing it on Derek's keychain, the same keychain that was currently inside the weekender bag I had just thrown out the front door. I sat down at the computer to check our bank accounts. Password incorrect. I tried the utility bills. Password incorrect. Panic started to rise in my throat, hot and acidic. Derek had not just been cheating, he had been systematically revoking my administrative access to my own life. This was not just a breakup. This was a hostile takeover. I picked up my phone and dialed Riley Hartley. My cousin did not do warm and fuzzy. She worked in high-stakes corporate risk management in Atlanta, and she viewed emotions as inefficiencies. "It is 11 at night. Megan," Riley answered after 2 rings. "Derek is gone," I said, my voice sounding tinny in the quiet room. "He has a girlfriend. He locked me out of the accounts, and I cannot open the file cabinet." There was a pause on the line. I could hear the click of a lighter and a long exhale. "Listen to me carefully," Riley said, her tone shifting instantly to professional command. "Do not cry. You do not have time to cry. You need to secure the physical assets first. Then we secure the digital ones. Do not sleep until you know what you own and what you are owing, or you might wake up homeless." "He took the keys," I whispered. "Then change the locks," Riley ordered. "Tonight, call the emergency locksmith, pay the extra fee. If he has a key, you are not safe." I spent the next 3 hours watching a stranger drill into my front door. The sound of metal grinding against metal screamed through the silent neighborhood. Sawdust and brass filings fell onto the welcome mat. It cost me $400 for the emergency service, but when the locksmith handed me the new heavy brass keys, I felt the first returning flicker of control. I had him install a high-definition doorbell camera and a motion sensor light while he was there. The house was finally silent again when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Derek. "I am coming by at 12 o'clock to get my papers in the fireproof box. Don't be dramatic." He was not asking. He was issuing a memo. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the message, created a new folder on my phone named Evidence, and saved it. Just as I was about to set the phone down, Caleb's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated. I did not want to talk to anyone, but Caleb had defended me. I slid the bar to answer. "Megan." His voice was thick, like he had been crying. "I am okay, Caleb," I said. keeping my voice steady. No, you don't understand, Caleb stammered. I need to tell you something. I heard Derek talking to his buddies at a bar a few weeks ago. I thought it was just trash talk, but what? I asked. He made a bet, Caleb said, his voice breaking. He bet $5,000 that he could get Tessa to sleep with him before the wedding. He said breaking you was just the warm-up. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He said that, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He said you were boring, Caleb continued, the words tumbling out fast now. He said he was playing the long game. Megan, I am so sorry. I hung up the phone. I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by the remnants of the life I thought I had. The sadness vanished. In its place, something harder and much colder settled in. Derek did not see me as a wife. He did not even see me as a human being. To him, I was just an obstacle between him and his prize. I looked at the locked file cabinet. I looked at the new keys in my hand. If I was an obstacle, I would be the most difficult, painful, and immovable obstacle he had ever encountered. I would not give him anger. I would not give him tears. I would give him absolutely nothing but walls. The doorbell rang at 7:30 in the morning. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen island with a cup of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. When I opened the door, Tessa was standing there. Her face was a ruin. Her eyes were swollen almost shut, and her skin had the gray, pasty look of someone who had spent the night vomiting up anxiety. She didn't say hello. She just collapsed into my arms. We stood in the doorway for a long time, the morning humidity of Charleston wrapping around us. When I finally led her to the sofa, she curled into a ball, clutching her phone like it was a grenade. I am so sorry, Megan, Tessa sobbed, her voice jagged. I was so scared to tell you. He made me feel like it was my fault. He said if I told you, I would be the one destroying the friend group. Show me, I said. My voice was frighteningly calm. Tessa unlocked her phone and handed it to me. It was not just a few texts. It was a novel of harassment. I scrolled through months of messages from a contact saved as "Do Not Answer." You know you are better than him. One message read, Megan is dead weight. She has no passion. Just give me a sign and I will leave her tonight. Why are you ignoring me? You know you want it. Then, a photo sent 3 days ago. It was taken from our backyard, looking into our kitchen window while I was washing dishes. The caption read, Look at her. She is a robot. Help me feel alive again. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. This was not just a cheating husband. This was a predator hunting for sport within our inner circle. He was not looking for love. He was looking for a conquest to validate his own ego. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the sharp, metallic taste of adrenaline. I was no longer a wife mourning a marriage. I was an investigator looking at a crime scene. I picked up my phone and called Riley again. I put her on speaker. He has been harassing Tessa for months, I told Riley. I have the logs. Good, Riley said, her voice crisp. Now, you are going to become the librarian of filth. Do not just keep them on the phone. Phones get lost. Phones get wiped. I want you to print everything. Save it to a new cloud account that he does not know exists. Make a physical binder. Timestamp every single page. For the next 4 hours, my dining room table, the same table where he had humiliated me the night before, turned into a war room. Tessa and I sat side by side. We did not cry. We processed. We took screenshots of every text, every missed call, every email. We organized them chronologically. Caleb arrived around noon. He looked as exhausted as Tessa. He sat down and slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a written timeline of conversations he had had with Derek over the last 6 months. There is something else, Caleb said, looking down at his hands. I remembered the exact phrasing he used at the bar. He didn't just say he wanted Tessa. He said, I have to break Megan first. If she is still confident, Tessa won't crack. But if I turn Megan into a pathetic victim, Tessa will look at me for stability. I stared at Caleb. Derek had not just stopped loving me. He had actively strategized my psychological destruction as a prerequisite for his affair. He viewed me as a structural support beam he needed to demolish to expand his property. Okay, I said. I stood up and walked to the printer. It hummed and spat out the last batch of screenshots. I took the warm paper and punched holes in the side. I opened a thick, black 3-ring binder and snapped the clamp shut. The sound was loud and final. No more talking to him, I announced to the room. He feeds on reaction. If I scream, he wins. If I cry, he wins. From this second forward, he does not exist to me as a person. He is a legal entity. Every word he wants to say to me can go through a lawyer. I looked at the binder on the table. It was 2 inches thick already. It was heavy, ugly, and undeniable. It was the only thing in my life that made sense anymore. I ran my hand over the plastic cover. He wants a reaction, I whispered to myself. I am going to give him a record. Dana Klein did not have pictures of her family on her desk. She had a glass surface that looked like a frozen lake and a fountain pen that probably cost more than my first car. She did not offer me water. She did not offer me a tissue. She simply extended a manicured hand, took the binder I had prepared, and opened it with the precision of a surgeon preparing to cut. I don't need the sob story, Dana said, flipping a page without looking up. Love makes people stupid. Money does not lie. Let's look at the math. She connected her laptop to the large monitor on the wall and pulled up the credit report she had run on me and Derek just minutes before I arrived. The screen filled with numbers. I expected to see the usual charges: groceries, gas, maybe a few hidden dinners. Here, Dana pointed a laser pointer at a cluster of transactions. The small bleeds. $400 at the Hotel Bennett on a Tuesday, $200 at a steakhouse when he said he was working late, $300 at a jewelry store in Mount Pleasant. I felt a sting of humiliation, but Dana did not give me time to process it. She scrolled down, her face hardening. Mrs. Hartley, are you aware of the home equity line of credit secured against your property? I blinked. The what? A HELOC, Dana said, her voice dropping an octave. It was opened 6 months ago. The limit is $90,000. I never signed that, I said, shaking my head. We have a mortgage. We don't have a second loan. I would never agree to that. Dana clicked on the detail view. It was notarized electronically. Tell me, does your husband have access to your passport? Does he know the password to your primary email address? Yes, I whispered. He keeps all the documents in the file cabinet. He set up the Wi-Fi. Then he has everything he needs to be you, Dana said bluntly. He created a digital signature, used your ID for verification, and intercepted the confirmation emails before you ever saw them. She tapped a key, and the transaction history for the loan appeared. It was a list of hemorrhage. He has already withdrawn $65,000, Dana stated. The room spun. $65,000. That was the equity we had built over 10 years. That was the safety net for a rainy day. It was gone. Where? I struggled to breathe. Where did it go? To a corporate entity, Dana said, highlighting a recurring transfer. Blue Hollow Ventures, LLC. She quickly opened another tab and searched the state business registry. Here it is, registered 5 months ago by Derek Vaughn. The address is a rented post office box in North Charleston. It is a shell company. Megan. He is washing the money out of the marriage so he can claim he is broke during the divorce. I stared at the screen. The GF comment, the arrogance, the cruelty, it all snapped into focus. When he told me I would regret kicking him out, he was not talking about loneliness. He was talking about bankruptcy. He had not just broken my heart, he had rigged my financial life to explode. What do I do? I asked. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating rage. Dana leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. First, you are going to go to the bank immediately after this meeting. You will open a new account solely in your name at a different bank. You will transfer exactly 50% of the remaining joint funds, not 51%. Exactly half. If you take more, a judge will see it as theft. If you take half, it is preservation of assets. She started typing rapidly. Next, we freeze your credit with all 3 bureaus. We place a fraud alert, and we draft a police report for identity theft regarding the loan. But we do not file the report yet. Why not? I asked. Because we need him to feel safe, Dana said, a thin, dangerous smile appearing on her face. He thinks you are an emotional wreck. He thinks you are crying over old photos. If he knows you found Blue Hollow Ventures, he will panic and hide the rest of the money. She closed the laptop with a soft click. Do not confront him. Do not ask him about the money. Let him think he is the smartest person in the room. That is the only way we catch him with his hand in the jar. At exactly 12 o'clock, the knocking began. It started as a rhythmic, polite rap on the wood, the kind a neighbor might use when borrowing sugar. I stood in the hallway, my eyes fixed on the tablet screen mounted to the wall, watching the live feed from the new doorbell camera. When I did not answer within 10 seconds, the rhythm changed. Derek began to pound on the door with the side of his fist. "Megan, open the door, I know you are in there," he shouted, his voice pitched perfectly to carry across the quiet cul-de-sac. He was performing. He stepped back, looked around to ensure the neighbors were watching, and then pulled out his phone. I watched on the screen as he dialed 3 numbers. He held the phone to his ear, his face contorting into a mask of concern. "Yes, I need police assistance at my home," Derek said, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "My wife is having a mental health crisis. She has locked me out and is erratic. I am worried she might hurt herself." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but I did not move. Then, I saw him do something that made my blood freeze. While still on the phone with the dispatcher, Derek looked left and right. Thinking he was unobserved, he walked over to our brick mailbox and delivered a sharp, vicious kick to the metal door, denting it inward. "She's destroying property," he yelled into the phone, feigning panic. "Please hurry." He did not know about the new camera. He did not know that he had just recorded his own vandalism in high definition. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. 2 officers stepped out. As they approached, Derek rushed toward them, hands raised in a gesture of helplessness. "Thank God you are here," Derek said, breathless. "She is in there right now. She threw me out last night. She is unstable." I waited until the officers were on the porch. Then, I unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door slowly. I was not crying. I was not screaming. I was wearing a pressed blazer and holding a black binder in one left hand and the deed to the house in the right. "Good afternoon, officers," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I am Megan Hartley. I am the sole owner of this property. There is no crisis here." The older officer looked from Derek, who was sweating and frantic, to me, standing perfectly still. "Sir, you said she was destroying property," the officer asked. "She is," Derek stammered, pointing at the mailbox. "Look at the mailbox. She went crazy." "We can review the security footage in a moment," I said, cutting him off with surgical precision. "It will show exactly who kicked that mailbox 3 minutes ago." Derek's face went pale. He blinked rapidly, realizing the trap. I just need my things." Derek pivoted, his voice trembling slightly. "I have a heart condition. I need my medication. And the fireproof box in the master closet. It has my medical records." "The medication is personal property," I said to the officer. "The fireproof box contains financial documents and titles. It is a marital asset subject to division. He cannot remove it. "It is my box," Derek shouted, lunging forward. The officer stepped in front of him, hand resting near his belt. "Step back, sir." At that moment, a car pulled into the driveway. Riley stepped out. She walked up the driveway with the stride of a general entering a battlefield. "I am Riley Hartley," she announced, standing next to me. "I am a witness to this interaction. We are represented by Dana Klein. If you allow him to remove financial documents from this home without a court order, we will be filing a complaint against the department by 5 o'clock today." The mention of Dana Klein changed the atmosphere instantly. The officer nodded at me. "Ma'am, let him get his clothes and his medication. Nothing else. Sir, if you touch a piece of paper or a computer, you are going downtown." So, I stood by the door as Derek walked past me. He smelled of stale alcohol and desperation. He came back down 10 minutes later with a duffel bag of clothes and a bottle of pills. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes darting to the closet where the money box was hidden. He knew he had lost. As the officer escorted him to his car, Derek turned back one last time. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper so the police would not hear. "You think you are so smart," he hissed. "You think Tessa is on your side. Wait until you find out the truth. You will regret this." He got into his car and drove away. I did not respond to his taunt. I simply looked up at the small black lens of the camera above the door, staring directly into it as if to say I heard that. And now, so did the jury. My phone lit up at 6 o'clock in the evening. It was a notification from Instagram. Derek had posted a photograph. It was a black and white selfie of him looking out a rainy window, his expression somber and carefully staged. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "The hardest part of love is knowing when to walk away to save yourself." Mental health is a silent battle, and I am heartbroken that my wife has succumbed to her demons. I tried to help her, but some people do not want to be saved. Please pray for Megan during this unstable time. My blood boiled. I wanted to comment. I wanted to post the screenshots of his abuse, the bank transfers, the lies. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, trembling with the need to defend my sanity. But then Dana's voice echoed in my head. "Do not fight in the marketplace, fight in the courtroom." I put the phone down. I did not engage. Instead, I sent a group text to our mutual circle. "Drinks at my house? 7 o'clock. I have something to show you." They arrived with hesitancy in their steps. I could see the suspicion in their eyes. They had read Derek's post. They were wondering if I was actually having a breakdown. I did not offer them wine. I did not play music. I stood in the center of the living room, looking like a CEO conducting a shareholder meeting. "I know what you read," I said, my voice steady. "I am not asking you to pick a side because you like me better. I am asking you to look at the data." I nodded to Tessa. She stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly. She placed a stack of printed papers on the coffee table. "Read them," Tessa whispered, one by one. Our friends picked up the pages. They read the texts where Derek called me a corpse. They read the messages where he tried to coerce Tessa into sleeping with him by promising to destroy my reputation. They read the timestamps. The room went dead silent. It was the silence of a funeral for a reputation. Then, Ryan, a guy Derek had known since college, looked up. He looked sick. He told me. Ryan started, then stopped. "He told me a month ago that he was restructuring his life. He said he needed to separate his debt from his assets. He called you an anchor, Megan. He said, you cut the anchor before the ship sails." I thought he was talking about business. I didn't know he meant this. The puzzle pieces clicked into place for everyone in the room. They realized they were not friends to Derek. They were an audience he was manipulating. The look of pity they had for me vanished, replaced by a collective look of disgust directed at the absent man. My phone rang again. It was Gordon Vaughn, my father-in-law. The room watched as I answered. I expected him to yell at me for kicking his son out. "Megan!" Gordon's voice was gruff. "Hello, Gordon," I said, bracing myself. "Did you change the locks?" he asked abruptly. "Yes," I said. "I did. Good." Gordon let out a heavy sigh. "He called me an hour ago. He asked for $20,000. He said you stole his wallet. I know you didn't. Megan, you are the most organized woman I know." I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time that day. He is posting things online. Gordon. He is saying I am crazy. "He is a liar," Gordon said, his voice cracking with the weight of a father's shame. "He has always been a liar. I paid off his gambling debts 10 years ago. I covered his failed investment in that restaurant 5 years ago. I am done covering for him. If you need a statement, an affidavit, about his history with money, I will write it." I looked around the room at the faces of my friends, and then I looked at the phone. "Thank you, Gordon," I said softly. I hung up. I realized something profound in that moment. Derek had calculated everything, the money, the lies, the timing, but he had failed to calculate the one variable that actually matters. He assumed loyalty was static. He did not realize that when you push decent people too far, they do not break, they reorganize, and they were all reorganizing around me. Donna sent me a text message that chilled my blood. "I need you to find the origin of that signature. Signatures vary naturally. No one signs their name exactly the same way twice. If the loan document matches another document perfectly, it is a forgery." I sat at my computer and opened my archived emails. I searched for sign, document, and Derek. I scrolled back through the timeline of our marriage, looking for any administrative task he had asked me to do. Then I found it. An email from 7 months ago. The subject line was innocuous lower home insurance rates sign ASAP. I remembered that evening vividly. Derek had been cooking dinner, humming a tune. He had wiped his hands on a towel and handed me his iPad with a charming smile, telling me he had found a way to save us $600 a year. I had used my finger to scribble my name on the screen, trusting him completely. I had signed my own financial death warrant while he chopped vegetables. I forwarded the email to Dana. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. "It is a match," Dana said, her voice hard as stone. I overlaid them in Photoshop. "It is not just similar. Megan, it is a pixel-for-pixel clone. He lifted your signature from the fake insurance form and pasted it onto the loan application. This was not a moment of weakness. He was planning to rob you 7 months ago." I hung up the phone and looked around my home. The walls seemed to close in. It suddenly felt like a trap. If he had hidden that, what else was he hiding? I began to tear the house apart. I pulled books off shelves. I looked under the mattress. I felt like a detective in my own bedroom, violating the privacy of a ghost. Finally, I checked the bottom of his nightstand drawer, underneath a stack of old magazines that I had never bothered to move. I found a manila envelope. Inside was a document that made my knees buckle. It was an exclusive right-to-sell listing agreement for our house. It was dated 3 days ago. The asking price was $50,000 below market value. In the notes section, written in Derek's handwriting, it read, "Cash buyers only. Quick close required." He was trying to sell the house out from under me before the divorce papers were served. He was going to take the cash and disappear. As I held the paper, my hand trembling, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed Miles Carter, realtor. I answered. "Hey, Derek," a cheerful male voice boomed through the speaker. "Great news, I have a cash buyer who wants to see the property this afternoon at 4 o'clock. If they like it, we can close in 10 days. My breath caught in my throat. He thought he was talking to Derek. He thought the house was ready to be sold. "This is not Derek," I said. My voice was low and shaking with rage. "This is Megan, his wife." There was a long, awkward silence on the other end. "Oh," Miles stammered. "Hi, Megan. I didn't know you were home." Derek said you guys were moving to Arizona and the house was vacant. We are not moving to Arizona, I said, enunciating every word clearly. And if you bring a single person to this doorstep, I will file a formal complaint with the licensing board for ethics violations. My name is on the deed. Miles? Did you check the title? Or did you just take his word for it? He showed me a signed consent form, Miles said, his voice dropping to a panic. Megan, I swear, I didn't know, he said. He forged it, I snapped. The house is not for sale. Do not call this number again. I hung up and immediately called Dana. He tried to list the house, I told her, my voice tight. He wants a quick cash close. He is trying to liquidate the asset before the court freezes it, Dana said. She sounded energized, like a shark smelling blood in the water. I am filing a lis pendens electronically right now. It is a formal notice of pending legal action attached to the property title. It effectively burns the bridge. No title company will insure the sale. No bank will touch it. He cannot sell a single brick of that house. I looked at the listing agreement in my hand. I crumpled it into a tight ball. Derek had tried to turn our home into a getaway fund, but he had forgotten that in real estate, just like in marriage, nothing is final until the paperwork is verified, and his paperwork was nothing but smoke. The summons to human resources came on a Tuesday morning. In my line of work, an unscheduled meeting with the HR director is rarely a social call. When I walked into the office, the atmosphere was stiff. The director, a woman named Sarah, whom I had worked with for 5 years, refused to meet my eyes. She slid a printed email across the desk. We received an anonymous tip through the whistleblower hotline, Sarah said, her voice tight. It alleges that you have been diverting vendor payments into a personal account. It uses very specific terminology regarding our governance protocols. I looked at the paper. The language was almost comical. It was filled with buzzwords like synergistic misappropriation and ledger bypass, the kind of words people use when they want to sound smarter than they are. I recognized the syntax immediately. It was Derek. He was trying to get me fired to cut off my income stream. Sarah, I said, keeping my hands folded in my lap, please ask IT to trace the IP address. If this was submitted through the external web portal, there is a digital footprint. Sarah sighed and nodded to the IT manager sitting in the corner. He tapped his tablet. We already did. Megan, he said. The sender used a VPN, but it dropped for 3 seconds during the transmission. The source IP resolves to a residential address in West Ashley. A Mrs. Martha Vaughn. That is my mother-in-law, I said simply. My estranged husband is currently staying there. This is a retaliatory move because I filed for divorce. The tension in the room broke instantly. Sarah looked relieved, then angry on my behalf. I left the office not with a reprimand, but with a certified copy of the IT log. I forwarded it to Dana immediately. Tortious interference with employment, Dana said when she called me back. And defamation per se. He just handed us a civil suit that could garnish his future wages for the next 10 years. Keep quiet. Let him think you are panicked. But Derek was not just attacking my job. He was trying to buy allies. Later that afternoon, Caleb met me in the parking lot of my building. He looked disgusted. He held up his phone to show me a text message from Derek that had come in an hour ago. Talk some sense into Tessa. If she recants her story about the harassment, I will cut you a check for $10,000 as soon as the house sells next week. Easy money. He is trying to bribe me with money he does not have, Caleb said, shaking his head. From a house sale that isn't happening. He just admitted in writing that he intends to sell the marital home without my consent, I said, snapping a photo of the screen. And he admitted to witness tampering. Send this to me. Now. That evening, I attended a birthday mixer for a friend. I knew people were whispering. I could feel their eyes on the back of my neck. They were waiting for the grieving wife or the crazy ex. I gave them neither. When a woman who lived for drama approached me and asked, with feigned concern, how Derek was doing, I took a sip of my sparkling water and smiled politely. I cannot discuss the details, I said, my voice carrying just enough for the group to hear. There is an active fraud investigation involving the police and our attorneys. The phrase fraud investigation sucked the oxygen out of the gossip. It sounded serious, criminal, and dry. It was not a messy breakup, it was a federal offense. The drama seekers backed away, bored by the lack of tears. The decent people, however, stepped closer. By the end of the night, 3 friends had offered to write character statements for my custody of the dog and the timeline of events. On my drive home, my phone buzzed with a text from Gordon. He is losing it. He just smashed a lamp in the den because a realtor called to cancel a viewing. Stay away. Megan, he is dangerous right now. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment. I looked at the new motion sensor floodlights that washed the yard in bright, clinical white light. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Dana had warned me that once the asset freeze was served, Derek would explode. He was running out of money, running out of lies, and running out of time. I walked to my front door, the heavy keys feeling solid in my hand. I did not need Derek to have a breakdown. I did not need him to suffer emotionally. I just needed him to keep generating paper trails until the cell door or the bankruptcy court slammed shut. The legal filing arrived via a courier on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I opened the thick envelope at my kitchen counter. As I read Derek's demands, a dry, humorless laugh escaped my lips. He was not just asking for a divorce. He was requesting spousal support. He was demanding 60% of our marital assets, claiming that his career potential had been damaged by the stress of our separation, and the $90,000 loan he had taken out in my name. His lawyer referred to it as a marital misunderstanding regarding shared capital allocation. It was not just a lie. It was an insult to the very concept of truth. My phone buzzed. It was a number I did not recognize. Can we just grab coffee for 10 minutes? No lawyers. Just us. We need to stop destroying each other. Please. I forwarded the screenshot to Dana immediately. Her reply came within 30 seconds. Do not answer. It is a trap. He is either wearing a wire or he will have a friend recording from the next booth. He wants you to yell at him so he can play it for the judge to prove you are unstable. I deleted the thread without replying. Derek realized silence was my weapon, so he decided to make some noise. By Friday, a rumor had started circulating at my office. A junior associate asked me, with awkward hesitation, if it was true that I was sleeping with the regional director. Derek was planting landmines in my professional life, hoping one would explode and strip me of my credibility. I did not storm into the break room to defend my honor. I simply opened my laptop, logged the date and time the rumor reached me, listed the witnesses, and added it to the defamation file. On Saturday morning, Gordon Vaughn came to my house. He looked 10 years older than he had the week before. He sat at my dining table and slid a heavy stack of documents across the wood. I went through my old bank records, Gordon said, his voice rough. It is all there. Megan, the bailouts, the gambling debts I paid off in Vegas 3 years ago, the business investments that were just him buying expensive watches. I wrote an affidavit. I picked up the sworn statement. Gordon had detailed a decade of financial enabling. He had destroyed his own son's image of being a successful consultant to save me. He told me he would ruin you, Gordon said, looking down at his hands. He said you were the one spending all the money. Thank you, Gordon, I said. This changes everything. I took the documents to Dana's office on Monday. She added them to what she called the coffin binder. It was a terrifying masterpiece of organization. 1 tab for the bank statements showing the transfers to the shell company. 1 tab for the forensic analysis of the forged signature. 1 tab for the IT logs proving the email attacks came from his mother's house. 1 tab for the bribery texts to Caleb. And now, the history of financial instability from his own father. We have mediation tomorrow, Dana said, tapping her pen on the binder. Here is the strategy. We do not negotiate. We do not argue about who gets the toaster. We are going to walk into that room and peel back the layers of his life until his lawyer realizes he is sitting next to a hand grenade. He thinks he is going to charm the mediator, I said. He can try. Dana smiled, but it never reached her eyes. But we are not there to settle a divorce. We are there to offer him a choice sign the agreement exactly as we wrote it, or we hand this binder to the district attorney. That night, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom. I looked at the woman reflected in the glass. She looked tired, but she looked steel-reinforced. "My name is Megan Hartley," I said to the mirror. My voice wavered. I stopped. I took a breath. "My name is Megan Hartley," I said again, this time lower, flatter. "I am the owner of the property. The funds were removed without my consent." I practiced for an hour. I stripped every ounce of emotion from my tone. I removed the anger, the hurt, and the betrayal. I left only the facts. I realized then that instant revenge was not about screaming in his face or slashing his tires. True revenge was watching him walk into a room thinking he was the hero, only to hand him a pen and force him to sign his own destruction. I turned off the light. I was ready. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and aggressive cologne. Derek sat across the mahogany table wearing his best navy suit, the one I had bought him for our 5th anniversary. He looked tragic and misunderstood. His lawyer, a man with a comb-over and a loud tie, opened the session by sliding a paper across the table. "My client has suffered significant emotional distress due to his wife's erratic behavior," the lawyer stated, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "We are requesting spousal support to maintain his standard of living, plus 60% of the marital assets. Regarding the loan, we view that as a marital misunderstanding regarding shared capital allocation." I did not speak. I did not blink. Next to me, Dana Klein did not reach for the paper. Instead, she lifted the black binder we had spent days assembling. She held it a few inches above the table and let it drop. The heavy thud sounded like a gavel striking a death sentence. "We are not here to negotiate a misunderstanding," Dana said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "We are here to offer your client a choice between a signature and a prison cell." She flipped open the first tab. "Exhibit A," Dana said. "Sworn affidavits from Tessa Monroe regarding sexual harassment, substantiated by 3 months of text messages. And a sworn statement from Mr. Caleb Price regarding attempted bribery and witness tampering." Derek's face went pale. He had assumed Tessa would be too ashamed to speak up. He looked at his lawyer, who was suddenly sitting up straighter. "Exhibit B," Dana continued, flipping the page. "It's security logs from Megan's employer. They trace a defamatory email sent to HR directly to the IP address of Mrs. Martha Vaughn's residence. That is tortious interference with employment." Derek's lawyer looked at Derek with visible irritation. "You told me you didn't send that." "Exhibit C," Dana said, ignoring them. "Bank records showing transfers of $65,000 to Blue Hollow Ventures LLC, a shell company registered to Derek Vaughn, and a LI's pendants filed yesterday preventing the sale of the marital home." Derek slammed his hand on the table. "That money was for a business investment you can't prove intent to steal." "Actually, we can," Dana said, turning to the next tab. She laid 2 pieces of paper side by side. One was the insurance form I had signed on the iPad 7 months ago. The other was the loan application. "These signatures are identical," Dana said, "down to the pixel. You copy-pasted her signature. That is forgery. That is bank fraud. That is a federal crime." The room went dead silent. Derek's lawyer closed his folder. He knew the case was over, but Dana was not finished. "And finally," Dana said, pulling out a USB drive, "the matter of the GF." She played a short audio clip. It was a voicemail Derek had left for himself on an old cloud account, likely when he was drunk, a habit he had when planning big moves. "The GF is ready. After dinner, I move the rest. The house sells before the 1st. And I am gone." Derek looked like he was going to be sick. You told everyone you were dating a girlfriend, Dana said, leaning forward. But you weren't. GF wasn't a person. We found the sub-account in your ledger labeled GF. It stands for Getaway Fund. You weren't cheating with a woman, Derek. You were cheating with a bank account. Derek's lawyer stood up. Can we have a recess? No, Dana said. You have 5 minutes. Sign this agreement. Megan keeps the house, her car, and her retirement. You assume 100% of the fraudulent debt. You agree to a permanent restraining order. Or, I walk this binder across the street to the district attorney, and you leave this building in handcuffs. Derek looked at his lawyer. The lawyer shook his head, signaling there was no way out. Derek picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so violently that the tip scratched the paper. He signed his name. He stood up to leave, his eyes filled with pure, toxic hatred. You think you won, he hissed at me. You are alone. Megan, you have nothing. I stood up and smoothed my blazer. I looked him dead in the eye, feeling lighter than I had in years. I am not ruined because of me, I said softly. You are ruined because you left your fingerprints on every word you said. I turned and walked out the door, leaving him in the cold, windowless room with nothing but his debt and his lies. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Derek's Getaway Fund. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Victoria Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button so more people can hear this story.